One. Okay, Belle, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, thank goodness. I love it when it works. Cool. I've had a couple times where I've had someone call in and I've been like, hey, can you hear me? And then I have a whole fiasco trying to get them back on the show in the middle of the show. Glad that didn't happen this time. How's your night going?
My night's going pretty good. How's yours?
Pretty good so far. I like it, and even better now that I'm here. So this should be a fun show. We have Belle Custodio on the air with us, writer extraordinaire. She's been writing for, 35, 40 years probably at this point?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. How long have you been writing?
Actually, creatively, it's just been a couple of years.
Beautiful.
Other than that, basically just the kind of essay stuff from high school and grade school. Gotcha.
Hey, those are still writing, in my opinion. All practice. Well, I'm trying to think of something else I want to say here because I totally blanked for a split second. Opened up my phone to find your pieces. These pieces tonight are going to be quite exciting. I have previewed them, and I think we are in for a real treat. So I think we should just dive right in. We got enough that this should fill the show pretty well. Would you be willing to read this first piece?
Yeah.
Okay. Give us the title and dive on in.
Okay. Yeah. So this piece is called Burning Bridges. The sharps of red hues that leave behind gray, colors of rage that break open in the sky, figures dancing with calamity underfoot, warm flashes with no remorse, the tightening grasp of smoky grays, clouds of black with no end in sight, colors that hold my lungs at gunpoint, the air their hostage, the culprit of destruction in my palm, a pile of ashes lay between us.
Well, the title seems kind of self-explanatory, but I would like some background. This is a cool piece.
Yeah, so it's kind of about burning bridges. I mean, I wrote this at a time where I was seeing a lot of people in my life who were, burning bridges and kind of saying they had no, turning back point. Mm. And, I feel like that has a really negative connotation. But sometimes you have, toxic relationships, and I found myself, coming to that point where there was no turning back, and it was both a negative and a positive because you're burning the bridges with someone you once knew, maybe you were close, but maybe that's a good thing,
From the ashes comes new growth as well. Beautiful. I also like a lot of people who will write things. I've seen a few people talk about burning bridges as well, and sometimes the onus is put on the other person, and I do like that at the end here you said the culprit of destruction in my palm. There is kind of an acceptance that, yeah, I might have actually burned this bridge. This might have been me. There's a pile of ashes between us now, and I'm holding on to possibly the matches. That's a good way to put that. Is that a...
Yeah, I mean...
Oh, go ahead.
It's kind of a thing where it's I usually can recognize that both people or both parties are at fault, and again, it comes from that point where it's kind of a good thing. It's kind of a choice sometimes that you make the choice to do these things rather than it just be a circumstance that happens to you.
Also, I like that this piece kind of captures the moment of the reality around the burning of the bridges, sharps of red hues that leave behind gray, colors of rage that break open the sky. I feel there is an easier choice to be made when you're writing of just saying this, let's focus on the bridge burning, let's focus on this stuff. And you've painted an entire scene of what this looks like, and it's not something that is explicit to the bridge. It is something saying, I've changed the entire reality around me, and the emotions that have coursed through my veins and burned down this bridge are present in the very air that I'm breathing, and it's burning my own lungs. That is a cool picture you painted here.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that with my writing, I kind of do that, I guess. I mean, obviously I didn't always knew that I'd do this, but I do kind of, in a way, dance around the subject in, whatever terms that I want. And I think you'll see in some of the later poems, I use, colors a lot, which is something I just noticed that, that's a way that I express, scenes or things in my poetry a lot is through descriptive colors or talking about certain colors, stuff like that.
Oh, and you jogged my memory. I was going to say, your style, when I had previewed all of your pieces, is extraordinarily vibrant, and I would agree with that. You have a fantastic use of colors in your pieces, which people will see as we continue reading. Wow, beautiful. Anything you want to say more on burning bridges?
Not really. Just this one's more of my, I think it's my earliest piece of all the ones that I've given you, and it's one of my earlier pieces that I'm kind of proud of. I think it's one of my better pieces.
As you should be. This is a beautiful piece. It's fantastic. Yeah, and well, maybe I'll ask after. I kind of want to see if you have a estimation of when each piece was written, like distance, time-wise, distance apart, because that would be kind of cool to see your growth as a writer moving through your pieces. But we can talk about that at the end if you want.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's move on to the next one.
Okay. So this one is called American Dream. Penniless, penny-pinching, poor, the downtrodden, down on their luck, dumb, ignorant, and uneducated. The hungry are the worthless, can't succeed, won't achieve. We dot the sides of your streets. We hunger for more and more. We are the unfed who starve for freedom, trapped underneath, where the apple doesn't fall far from the family tree. Draped in rags, carrying broken bags, empty bottles and cans, life with lost plans, dogs with no leash on, little family to rely upon, wandering the empty street, broken shoes on my feet. Life lived with issues unseen, those beneath the skin, underlying. Working, striving, struggling, with empty plates, penniless pockets, and hopeless dreams.
Oh, man. This one was a hard one for me to preview before. I remember reading it just before the show going, wow, this is going to be heavy to talk about. So please unpack this a little bit.
Yeah, so this kind of happened in pieces. I just kind of like looking back, the first line, penniless, penny pinching poor, kind of came to me at one point where it just kind of reminds me of growing up, since I was very poor growing up. We were always like scrounging around like loose change to buy milk at the end of the month, so that's kind of where that came from. The part in the middle about like draped in rags and carrying broken bags, that kind of came from more recently when, for a brief period of time, my family was living in their car and they were like temporarily homeless. And I was similarly deemed like a homeless youth because I had to like move in with a friend because, you know, they had moved around and jumped around a bit and were living in their car. And so that's kind of where like the first person perspective comes from. So it's just a bit of everything that I feel like I experienced, both like looking at our homeless issue and also feeling very personally connected to it.
So not only is the piece an observation on our society of the American dream, but also coming from your own personal space as well. That is beautiful and rough.
Yeah.
Life lived with issues unseen, those beneath the skin underline. I like that line a lot. Broken shoes on my feet. This is a beautiful piece. I feel when I look over America, the penniless, penny-pinching poor is what I kind of associate with the American dream at this point, downtrodden, down in their luck. So you have captured this quite well. And I will say good job, but this hits me in a very deep spot. But this is a very well-written piece.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else you want to add on to this piece?
I mean, not too much. Just coming from that background again, like the first part really has to do with that. Like now I'm going and pursuing higher education, and that's very difficult. I'm trying to get out of a situation where my family is like generationally like impoverished and uneducated, and I'm trying to like break the mold. So I see that also from this perspective, where, you know, the American dream is about being able to rise above it and being able to be your own person and do it all yourself, but that can be so difficult depending on where you come from, where you don't have those opportunities.
I agree with that. And I also, just reviewing this on my phone right now, I really do like your second stanza here, because I think it's a unifying one, especially with the repetitive word use here. We dot the sides of your streets. We hunger for more and more. We are the unfed who starve for freedom. I think it is important to recognize that you are talking about the American people, and that is something that is unifying, and that we're all experiencing in, to some regard. Maybe not to the level you've experienced it, and maybe to beyond the level you've experienced it. But I do like that this piece has some semblance, in at least this point, of kind of a unifying shared dream, no matter how sad it might be, or how unrealized, or, you know, what have you. Beautiful piece. This was very well written. Well, would you like to move to the next one?
Yeah. So this third one is called In Between. In between shades of black and white live hues of gray and me. A sea of colors in between that wash the shores of colors known. Caught between two sides, the sea between two continents of different lives. I can see them both and gently bring them close, but can never be where they reside. A sea of mixing colors, not one nor the other, yet not both, but neither. I am the sea in between, a wash of colors unknown to me, defined by colors I cannot see.
This is probably my personal favorite piece that you've submitted tonight. Please unpack this one as well. I will wait to add my comments till after.
Yeah, so this one's also a bit more recent. I was kind of coming to terms with feeling like I don't belong in either regard. So my mother is Caucasian. My father was from the Philippines. I didn't really grow up with much of, like, his culture or anything like that. And, you know, it really came from a point where, like, you know, every year when you have to do, like, any type of government paper and they ask, like, your race or ethnicity, you have to mark those little boxes. And it kind of came from never really knowing what to put down, because I don't feel like I am, you know,
box you can check.
Father's side or mother's side.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of difficult, like, being in between those options.
Yeah. I like the I am the sea in between. There are, maybe this is just my own personal take when I read, or my own personal perspective when I read writing, but the parts emotionally that are negative and positive tend to pop out to me. And I do like that this piece has kind of a connotation of I'm bewildered about where I'm sitting, and I can't identify with one or the other, but I am massively vibrant, and I am as expansive as the sea. I am the sea in between, because there is not just a small defined range of who you are. It is more or less infinite. And so when I read this piece, I identify a lot with it, not knowing really where you fit in reality, who you should identify with, how to identify with different people. But I do like that you've kind of captured the sense of, but also I am quite infinite in that capacity, and I don't have to be one or the other. Maybe I misspoke on that. Is that an accurate kind of reading there?
No, I think that's not the way I thought of it, but I think that's a really great interpretation.
Oh, well, this is why we talk about it, I guess.
Yeah. I kind of, when you brought up that line, I kind of remembered, this piece went through a lot of reiterations, and it really came about kind of thinking of myself as, like, part of a sea of a bunch of different people, because I know so many people struggle with this, like, identity issue of feeling like they don't belong to, like, a certain race or ethnicity because maybe they don't speak the language or they don't know the culture, because there's a huge disconnect. And I feel like that was kind of my thought, where it was like, I'm like a drop of water in a sea of people who share this same, like, confusion with me.
I see. Oh, I like that more. I'm gonna side with that perspective. That's much more beautiful than what I said. Wow, this is so cool. I love your writing. You have a definitive style, and your use of colors in every single piece is wildly nuanced and different between each piece, which I think is really cool. There is no, I won't say there is none, because there is some, but there is no repetitive use that is stagnating. You keep it extremely fresh between the pieces. That is a really, really, you have a talent there. Well done.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on to the next one, Shadows.
Right. So this one is called Shadows. To walk beside me in the light means following in the darkness I leave behind. The shadows I cast are not of my own accord, but from the light that life shines upon me. They loom behind me, they lurk above me. Shadows that cast their darkness on me. Dark shades are sometimes all that I see. But a trick of the light is how even small things can cast a large shadow. And a trick of the mind is how even I can live there beside you.
As I've said before, please unpack before I comment.
Right. So this kind of shifts perspectives a bit because I'm not a very confident individual, so I always feel like everyone around me is like, you know, so much brighter and better in so many regards than I am. And then, you know, speaking to those people, they say the same thing back towards me where they're like, you know, really, like, I thought you were, you know, you're so smart and all these things. And, like, they're things that I can't really see. I've always said, like, oh, you know, I'm just, like, lucky or something. Like, I don't really ever allow myself to claim credit for the things that I do in life. I'm just like, oh, it's all luck, you know, it just kind of happens. So that's kind of the point where it's like, I feel like life has shined a light upon me, and I just kind of got lucky in that regard. But it's also somewhat a pressure, because if I acknowledge that things are caused because of me and my own actions, then there's something more I have to live up to.
I see. Can you unpack the last two lines a little bit for me? Because maybe I'm confusing. I don't want to misspeak on something here. Here's the last three lines. Even small things can cast a large shadow, and a trick of the mind is how even I can live there beside you. Can you explain those pieces for me?
Yeah, so that was kind of like the shift where I kind of like bringing it back, where it's like, even if I acknowledge that I can do great things, I still feel like people do greater things. Like, we're all caught up in someone's shadow. And so we both have to live in the light so we can both, you know, acknowledge each other for each other's beauty and greatness, so that we can live beside each other and not in each other's shadows.
So this is almost talking about a slight perspective shift so we can all fit.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That is a beautiful, beautiful statement. And just to add on some confidence building for you, the people beside you that are looming behind you and lurking above you, they have not submitted to my show. So take some radiance to that, because you have stepped out into a cool spot and now you get to be the one shining. I think that's pretty neat. This is a beautiful piece, and the introspection that you have, especially in some of the prior ones, but this one specifically, well done. I think it's hard to write about this stuff. It's hard to unpack it, and it's hard to crystallize it in a way that is someone else can take something from. You know, a lot of times people will write things and it's not explicit enough to be understood, or in a way that you know, without a lot of discussion. And your writing is extremely crystal clear for this. So thanks for that. Makes it easy to discuss on the show.
Good. I was worried they'd be too confusing and you can't tell what they're about.
No, I think these are coming across pretty well.
Good.
Yeah, from my own perspective at least. Is there anything else you want to add on in Shadows?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's move on to the next one then. I want to get all your pieces in tonight.
All right. So this one is called Life's Colors. Yellow is the sun that claws atop the horizon, red of the bleeding, beaten dawn. Left with deepening purples, fleshy pinks of dusk, blue of the broken night, black and discolored. Swollen star clusters scatter the sky, hues of early morning to the dead of night. Spinning lights curve the passage of time, blurry memories, cyclically blue and red. The swift exchange between the two, wailing tones, like the tears of children, sounds of saviors that pierce the ear, shades of my childhood, past goodbyes.
Oh man, that last sentence gives me shivers. Okay, please, give me some context for this. I'm ready.
So this one kind of goes into, obviously, my childhood, where my father would, do some bad things, and he would be arrested for that. So that's kind of the color point. The blue and red, I remember just seeing those colors, the way they wash over, the whole neighborhood when the police cars are in front of your house specifically.
I see.
And all the other colors that just kind of, they're bright and beautiful, but they can be associated with some really, painful and dark things because of what they're attached to.
Oh, man. I see that now. I hadn't actually read enough into that cyclically blue and red. Now that really hits home in what you're talking about. I can see the flashing of sirens outside of a window. You have, this piece comes to, sorry, too many thoughts in my head right now. This piece comes to a beautiful point at the end. Shades of my childhood, past goodbyes. You talk about a wide array of colors at this point, starting from a very positive point and into a very concise, not necessarily, I would say, a negative perspective, because I think it's positive in my opinion. Shades of my childhood, past goodbyes. That is a beautiful thing to say, meaning how I'm reading it, and please tell me if I'm incorrect on this, but you've seen the colors, you've looked at them, you recognize them, you see the beauty in the positive sides of them, and you see and recognize the side that is not necessarily quite so positive, and you've said goodbye to them. Shades of my childhood, past goodbye, things that I've let go, and I'm moving somewhere else. Is that kind of accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty close. I mean, it's kind of more like, I mean, when writing this, and maybe you have to read into it a bit deeper, is that, like, all the colors are really associated with negative things, but the part about past goodbyes really ties back into the whole, like, you know, blue and red are from, like, the cop car sirens, stuff like that, so someone's leaving. But I do think that's in a positive way, since I've come to terms with those kind of things, and, you know, when bad people do bad things, that's kind of why the cops show up and take them away. So I don't associate it as being as negative of a thing as I did when I was a kid and couldn't comprehend it. So it is kind of in a positive light, but it's also kind of soured just because of the whole situation.
I see, and you're right, I completely missed that. Yellow is the sun that claws atop the horizon. Red is the bleeding, beaten dawn. Yeah, this did not start from a positive point, so I misspoke on that one. Thanks for correcting me. Wow, beautiful, beautiful piece. This stuff, each piece is more vibrant than the last, or equally as vibrant as the last, I should say. Oh, please, move on to the next one. I want to get this in.
All right, so this one is called I Face Death at Dawn. With the rising sun follows my imminent doom. A beautiful sea of colors will fall upon the horizon and wash over my freshly dressed corpse. Here I will lie, feeling compelled to release my final breath. The sun at its highest hour will beat down upon my chest. The light will cascade upon my face in mockery of my immobility. And I will lie, unable to detest the sky. And when the stars stop the night, I too will once again rise, animated with the gloomy thoughts of nightfall. And here I will rot, letting my mind decay in the dim moonlight, roaming the hillside in my unavenged hatred, until dawn again lays my demons to rest.
Wow, this is a wild piece. Please unpack this.
So this one I kind of wrote differently than all the others. Usually I have a memory or an image of some sort in my mind when I write, and I write a way that hopefully encompasses what I'm thinking of. This was the first time, and this one I think is the most recent, where I just wrote, and this one's very interesting to me because I feel like I come to my own, like, perspective and interpretation of the poem just as any person would reading it.
Beautiful. Wow. It's kind of been maybe cathartic in that capacity. It's kind of given you a perspective that you didn't know you were coming to by the end of it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it was very interesting to write because, I mean, I wrote it honestly not knowing what I was writing until I read it over a couple times and interpreted it and came to my own meaning of, like, I think this is what I'm trying to convey.
What was your meaning, out of curiosity?
So it was kind of like a mixture of a lot of things. I feel like I often have a hard time, like, falling asleep because I have a lot of, like, thoughts racing through my mind, stuff like that, but also the idea that, like, I can't sleep, but I also don't want to get up. So that kind of, like, depressed feeling where maybe you can't even fall asleep, but you also can't bring yourself to, like, get out of bed. So that kind of plays with the whole, like, day-night cycle.
Restless and tired, but can't really go one direction or the other.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. I have a lot of artists tell me that when they write, it is cathartic for them in healing capacities. And a lot of times they go back and reread their piece and things kind of come to light in their own head. And so it's amazing that you've been able to identify that so quickly. This is a cool piece. I Face Death at Dawn. Wow. Well, Belle, I want to keep adding on more to this, but we only have a few minutes left, so I'll ask you maybe a final question. I know you haven't been writing long, and I hope you enjoyed your time on the show here. So my question to you is, for any writers that are attempting or wish to be writing, what advice would you get them to get them started?
I guess my advice is to just do it for yourself. Like you mentioned, the type of like catharsis that writers say they go through, that's definitely something that I feel. And I think I did start writing first just to like purge those emotions, and I think that comes through a lot of my pieces. And I mean, if you want to take it somewhere like I did, where I want to share my work with people, that's beautiful. But I think it should definitely just start for your own self and for whatever you need or want at that time.
Oh, that is beautiful and concise. Some people will try to talk over my last 2 minutes here, and you are on it, man. Okay, well, here's another one then. Is there anything you've identified in your writing that you felt has made you healthier as a person?
I think I've just identified, again, it goes back to my previous answer, that I'm doing this for me. A lot of these pieces have to do with, like, introspection, like my childhood, things that are very difficult to get through. And I realized that writing a poem that I feel attached to, that I enjoy after writing it, is the most, like, cathartic thing that I can do to, again, like, purge those emotions, to, like, get those feelings out, and to really come to terms with myself, my emotions, and just anything that I'm, like, going through at that time.
Beautiful. Get them out of yourself so they're crystallized and you can see them clearly. Wow. Well, this has been Writing on Air and Belle Custodio. I hope you enjoyed the show, Belle, as much as I did, and enjoyed being on it, because this was a blast. Your writing is fantastic, and you have to submit some more at some point, because this is beautiful, beautiful work. And I'm really curious to see how you develop as a writer, too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. All right. Well, I'm going to end the show here, Belle, and read my underwriting. You're feel free to go at any point that you want, because we've got nothing left. So have a good night, Belle. And this has been Writing on Air. Writing on Air is made possible by the generous contributions of KZFR supporters and by Alternative Energy Systems.